We will look at Shorebird, what it is, how it works. And for this, we have today like a special guest with us, Felix Angelov. He is basically the creator of Shorebird. He has also created the blog State Management and also Mason. And yeah, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we wanted to give you a full demo so that you can see how you can integrate Shorebird into your apps so that you can push instantly update to the users without going through Google Play Store and Apple App Store every time. The first question is, what is Shorebird?
So in one sentence, Shorebird is the company. So Shorebird currently, our number one product is Code Push for Flutter. But Shorebird is kind of just a company that's going to be trying to bridge the gaps between what enterprises and large teams need out of Flutter. And sometimes that's stuff that the Flutter team at Google can do, but sometimes it doesn't really make sense for them to build solutions for certain things. And Code Push is one of those examples. So we want to kind of fill the gaps that exist in the Flutter ecosystem and kind of build some products to help make Flutter development more accessible and make, as Eric says, multi-platform the default for app development. So that's kind of a quick summary of Shorebird.
And yeah, so that's first of all about Shorebird. And I guess you can quickly give us a demo about how it works, how we can maybe install it, and how the users can directly use it for their Flutter app to push their app updates directly to the different users.
So the easiest way to get started with Shorebird is just to head over to our website, which is shorebird.dev. And you can read more about Shorebird on here. I won't go through this yet. We'll probably cover most of this later on in the questions. But to get started, all you have to do is click on the sign in button in the top corner. And that will take you to the Shorebird console. And you just need to log in with a Google account. At the moment, we only support Google accounts. But if you need a different provider, definitely let us know. And we'll add others. We just figured Google was a good place to start since most Flutter developers have Google accounts already. And once you've signed in with your Google account, there are some instructions that you can follow for how to install. Mainly the tool that you interact with when you use Shorebird Code Push is the Shorebird command line tool, or CLI. So if you're on Mac OS, you can just copy this one command and run it to install Shorebird. And if you're on Windows, you can copy this command on PowerShell, and it will clone our Shorebird repo and install everything that you need to get started. And then the last thing that you need to do before you can actually start adding Shorebird to your project is just log in. And I've done those steps already. So I have here just a blank VS Code window. And if I type Shorebird in my command line, you can see that I have the command line tool installed, and there's a bunch of commands that I can run, which we'll talk about. And I've already logged in to my same Shorebird account that I have here in the console. So that's all the setup. And for the demo, I figured probably the easiest thing to do would be to just run Flutter create. And hopefully most people who are watching are familiar with just the default project that gets created when you run Flutter create. And basically, the interesting part of how you add Shorebird is very simple. You can just keep following the instructions here. So the first thing you would do is just run this command called Shorebird init, and that will analyze your project, do some things like find out if you're using flavors or not, and it will ask you for a name for your project. So I'm just going to keep the default counter name. And then it will do a bunch of checks, make sure that your app is set up correctly for Shorebird to work. And the most important thing that it does is it creates this one file called the shorebird.yaml. So you don't have to add any dependencies to your pub spec. You don't have to change any of your Dart code. Like, I haven't touched any of that. All I've done is I've run one command, which is Shorebird init. It creates the shorebird.yaml file, which has just a unique identifier that tells Shorebird how to find my app or how to identify my app. And it tells the Shorebird servers that my app exists. So if I refresh the console, I should see there I now have my Shorebird apps is just a list of one app called Counter. And then here you can see this little rocket symbol is representing releases, and this little puzzle symbol is representing patches, which we'll talk more about, but I have no releases and I have no patches. And so the next thing I can do is I can create a release. And you can think of a release, creating a release in Shorebird the same way as creating a release normally. When you're about to submit to the Play Store or the App Store, you would create a release. and maybe you would run like Flutter build IPA -- release or Flutter build app bundle -- release. And so with Shorebird, it's the same thing. It's just a slightly different command. So I will demo Android at the moment. So I can just do Shorebird release Android, and that will run Flutter build app bundle behind the scenes and generate the app bundle. But that app bundle will contain Shorebird's updater so that you can push updates after the fact. So this can take maybe a couple more seconds. And then I will kind of go through how you can actually push an update, which is hopefully the exciting part. But yeah, this keep in mind can take a bit, especially if you're doing this on a larger project with lots of dependencies and Firebase, etc. It will basically take as long as it takes for you to normally build your project. So it can take a little bit. Usually Android's pretty quick, so I'm not sure. It's definitely thinking. Okay, there we go. So before we say yes, you can verify the information here. So you see some information about what app you want to create a release for, what the release version is, which we have 0.1.0, build number 1. And then we're releasing for Android. That looks all correct. So I hit yes to continue. And then this will upload my app bundle to Shorebird servers. And the reason for uploading the app bundle to Shorebird servers is so that later when I upload patches, Shorebird can create diffs of those patches so that when you submit a patch, you're only submitting the things that have changed, and you're not making users re-download a full, pretty big app, like a couple megabytes. Instead, it's only a couple 100 kilobytes usually. So that's the reason for creating a release. And yeah, once this is done, there we go. You should see some instructions. So normally, as I mentioned, you would create a release right before you want to submit to the App Store. So if I go into my build folder, you can see here it tells me build app outputs bundle. I have my AAB file, which if you've submitted to the Play Store, you're probably familiar with. So I can literally go to the Play Store and upload this AAB file and create a release. For this demo, I'm not going to do that because that will take way too long for us to actually see. But that's normally what you would do. But there's a cool command for if you want to verify changes locally, which is called Shorebird preview. If I can type Shorebird preview. And Shorebird preview will ask you what app you want to preview, what release you want to preview, what platform you want to preview on. And I currently have an Android emulator running. So it will download the release that we just uploaded to Shorebird servers and then run it on my Android emulator. So we see our hello world, which is nothing exciting, right? Like it's just the scaffold with some text in the middle. And so just for the purposes of this demo, all I'm going to do is I'm going to set a background color on my scaffold. So maybe we'll do like colors dot, I don't know, yellow. And maybe we'll say like hello from Shorebird instead. And you can make any Dart changes with Shorebird. It doesn't have to just be like simple things like changing a background color and changing text. Shorebird supports any Dart code changes, so you can even change packages and like lots of complex things. It doesn't have to just be this simple. I'm just doing this for the demo. But some things that you cannot change at the moment are Shorebird does not support changing assets. So if you, for example, wanted to add a new font, or if you wanted to add a new like image that you bundle with your app, Shorebird does not support that at the moment. We will soon support that, but it's currently not supported. And then the other big one is native code changes. So if you want to change like a native plugin that uses Kotlin, Java, Swift, Objective-C, etc., Shorebird does not support that, and it probably will never support native code changes. So you will always have to create a new release and go through the App Store review process if you change native code. So definitely keep that in mind. But Shorebird will detect that stuff. So don't worry if you're not sure. When you try to create a patch, as I'm about to do, Shorebird will analyze your changes and then give you a warning if you've changed something that Shorebird doesn't support. So now that I'm happy with my changes and I want to push those changes, so again, this is a release build of this app that's running on my phone here, Counter. So you can imagine I downloaded this from the App Store or the Play Store, and I want to push an update. And for that, you would just run Shorebird patch and I want to patch Android. And again, this is going to build the app that I have locally. And the difference is it's going to build the app, and then it's going to pull down the release that is associated with this app, and then it will check what did I change. In this case, I only changed the background color and the text. So we don't need to ship in the over-the-air update. We don't need to ship a lot of stuff. We only need to ship the small changes. And so here, hopefully, we'll see that the change is pretty small, like 75 kilobytes for ARM64, 62, etc. So pretty small. Especially considering like the default app size is like 5 megabytes or something. It's definitely much smaller. And I think patch sizes, we'll make them even smaller over time. But anyway, this all looks good. I'm happy with these changes. So I will again hit yes. I would like to continue. And then now I'm just going to run ADB. Let me actually run ADB logcat to clean. And then let's pull up the emulator again. So by default, what Shorebird does is if you just set it up the normal way, which I can show you in the shorebird.yaml, there's this one line at the end that is auto update, which is enabled by default. And what that means is every single time someone runs an app or launches an app that has Shorebird in it, when the app launches, Shorebird will check, is there an update available? So if I kill my app, my counter app, and I relaunch the counter app, we can see some logs, and we can see that Shorebird is writing some logs that says, okay, I'm checking to see if there's a patch available. Patch 1 was successfully installed. I can maybe make this a little bit bigger. And so basically, the first time I relaunch the app, it will check to see if there's an update available and install it in the background. And then the app is the patch is available. So the next time I launch the app, it will boot from the patch. And so I will be running now the changes that I made over the air without having to resubmit my app to the App Store. Again, this is a release build of the app. I didn't rebuild the app. I didn't do anything. It's just installed on my phone, and I made changes to it directly. And so that's basically Shorebird Code Push in a nutshell. So you can think about it kind of like the way I describe it sometimes is like hot restart in production. So I can make changes, save those changes, run a command, and then people can restart their app in production and then see those changes, which is super, super cool. And in the console, if I refresh, I can see things like, okay, my current latest release is version 0.10. My current active patch is patch number 1. I can see that I've only submitted a release for Android, which is okay. And then we have some basic information about patches, like how big they are, how many patches you have. And then we have some basic install analytics that we're working on adding even more, but we can see one person, aka me, just installed a patch for this version. And yeah, that's kind of like a quick overview of what the console helps you with. And you can also see in the account section of the console, based on what plan you're using with Shorebird, which we'll talk more about the plans later, but you can see your usage, like how many patch installs do you have remaining, what percentage have you used, how much money is it going to cost you, yada, 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 what apps are responsible for those patches, those types of things. So that's a super quick demo, and hopefully that was helpful. Now we can go back to the questions.
So there's still like a confusion, or like some people want to clarify about plugins and packages. So if they are using plugins, can they directly? They cannot, right? They cannot.
So I think, yeah, the important thing is when I say the word plugin, I mean like a Flutter plugin, which has a native dependency. So you can think like Connectivity Plus or Bluetooth or I don't know, geolocator, etc. Like things that have native code are not supported by Shorebird, but packages are. So if you just have a pure package, like if you want to add provider to your app, or if you want to add block to your app or add whatever to your app, as long as it's pure Dart code, Shorebird supports it. Even though it's in a package, that's okay. But plugins specifically, aka native code, is not supported. Or if you have native code that you're just writing in your app directly, like if you open your Android folder or your iOS folder and you write some native code, Shorebird cannot patch those. So just for native code changes. When I say plugins, I mean like Flutter plugins, but packages are okay as long as they're pure Dart.
The next question from the user, I think, is also interesting. Do you need to restart your app every time to get the update, or how does it work?
Is it okay if I share another quick demo?
Yes,
do we have time?
for sure.
Let me pull it up. So in our organization on GitHub, if you go to GitHub/Shorebird Tech, we have a lot of stuff. Most of the code is open source, by the way. But the interesting thing is, and I'm going to clone this to show you. Let me put it in the right spot. So if I so there's this example project which uses something called Shorebird Code Push, the Dart package, and this is available on pub.dev. So if you go to pub.dev packages Shorebird Code Push, you can see that basically it's a package that helps you communicate with Shorebird's Code Push updater. So you can customize the update experience. It doesn't have to just be the default experience that I showed you. The reason I showed the default experience is because that's what you get when you don't change anything. Like I didn't have to change any Dart code. And when my user restarts the app, they will get update checks and they will launch from updates, etc. But you don't have to just use that default mechanism. You can use the Shorebird Code Push package. And so we have an example of that here that's open source, which you can check out later. It's if you go into Updater, Shorebird Code Push, and then example. That's the app that I'm going to quickly run and show you. And so just for time's sake, let me install the dependencies. Since I just downloaded this, you saw me clone the repo. And then I'm going to, again, run Shorebird init, but I'm going to --force. It's going to do the same thing as before, ask me how I want to name the project. I'm just going to name it with the default name, Shorebird Code Push example. And then, again, it just creates the shorebird.yaml file, nothing special. I'm going to release Android, again, just like we saw. And then the cool thing is I'll run the app and show you the types of things that you can build using the package Shorebird Code Push on pub.dev. You can completely customize the update flow, how often you check for updates. I even recently, when I spoke at the Flutter and Friends conference in Stockholm, I demoed how you can send, for example, a push notification to people's devices that says, hey, there's an update available. Do you want to install it? And it's really up to you how you build that experience. We give you the tools to do all of that. So let me quickly let this finish. And then I'll show you what this example app looks like. And I think you might find that more user-friendly or a better user experience. And again, this is all open source. So if I go too fast or if you want to check this out, you can run this exact same demo on your computer after the live stream. So yeah, once this is done uploading, we can preview the app. All right. So really quick, again, let me just refresh in my console. Now I should have two apps. I have the counter that we did first, and now the Code Push, Shorebird Code Push example. And I'm going to preview the second one, the Shorebird Code Push example on Android. And this app will look a little more exciting than the boring counter app or basic app. So this app is basically an app that shows me if I have a patch installed, and then gives me a little button that allows me to check for if there's an update available. So if I click this button, we can see there's no update available, there's no update available. And so now I can go in, and again, this is a pretty simple app, but I can go in and I can change, for example, I don't know, my seed color from red to blue. And maybe we also want to change the brightness to dark, just to make it more dramatic so you can see the difference. And that's it. Like I again, just make my changes, and then I run Shorebird patch Android. That will create the build, do the diff, upload the diff to Shorebird servers. And then I should be able to just click this button to see if there's an update available, and users don't have to restart.
Does this also
does it also work?
Like listening to updates, for example, like it will show a dialogue or something. Would this also work?
Yeah, you can build that.
Okay,
We
yeah.
don't expose we don't expose like a subscription, like a stream that you can subscribe to or anything at the moment, but you can build that yourself.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, now that I've pushed the patch, we can see in the console that I have one patch available, and I can just in my emulator here click this button. Now I see in the top a little banner that says, hey, there's an update available. Do you want to download it? I can click download. It was a really fast download because it's tiny, so you might not even have seen the loading indicator. And then it says a new patch is ready, restart the app. And then bam, the app is restarted and it's using the changes that I've made here. And it tells me that the current patch number or version that I'm running is 1. And all of this is from the Code Push, Shorebird Code Push package. So it gives you APIs like give me the current patch number as a future. It gives me APIs like, is there a new patch available for download? It gives me APIs like, where is it? Download update, download update if available, etc. So you can check this out on pub.dev and you can completely customize the update experience. And you can even uncomment this line and disable the automatic update checks if you would like, if you want to completely manage the update process programmatically with your own logic. And like I said, you can make it really sophisticated. Like you can imagine every time you push a patch, you can send a push notification to your users, and then on your app, you can handle that notification and show them that there's a patch available. Use this package to prompt them and download the update and all that stuff. And like you can make it really, really seamless kind of experience that doesn't involve them having to restart the app twice. And the app restarting twice thing, we will probably continue to improve on. Like the default update behavior will probably continue to improve. But at the moment, it's one restart, and then it will check for an update, and then a second launch will boot from the update. So it depends on your requirements, but you have the tools. I just wanted to show that you have the tools necessary to customize that experience. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes. Okay. And we can also look at this one question. Like, yeah, when do you suggest to use Shorebird instead of Play Store and App Store directly to push? Is there like any specific use cases when you should go with Play Store, App Store, or when with Shorebird?
Yeah, I think actually, I recommend probably the safest thing that you can do is, let's say like you find a critical bug and you want to use Shorebird to fix that bug. I would probably recommend that you just fix that bug with Shorebird, but you also at the same time submit a new release to the App Store, because then you can kick off the App Store review process in parallel while you fix the bug immediately for people. And I think that there's no reason why you can't submit to the App Store like on the same frequency as you did before. But now you don't have to wait to get the updates into people's hands. I think the other thing that people don't oftentimes realize is, like, just because you've submitted to the App Store and just because it was approved by the App Store doesn't mean that your users are running that version of your app. Like a lot of times people have auto updates disabled on their phones and they're running a really, really old version of your app on their phone. And you have this like massive spread of users running like all kinds of versions of your app. And so Shorebird can help alleviate some of that if you are, for example, using Shorebird to kind of like make sure that people are always updating and staying on the latest version, or at least getting the fixes that are available on the newest versions without having to require like a force upgrade. That's one way. But yeah, I think there's no harm in still submitting to the, like, I don't think you need to stop submitting to the App Store and Play Store because you're using Shorebird. It's more, you can just think of it as a way to get the update on people's devices right away for critical things that need to be improved right away, that you don't want to be waiting multiple days for. And yeah, you can always, like I mentioned, submit in parallel so that the App Store will ideally review and approve those changes. And then people who install the app from the App Store, they'll install the latest version. They won't have to install the patch over the air. They'll already be running the patched version of the app. And I think that's the best case scenario. So like I mentioned on iOS, like even once iOS is stable, everything is going to run in an interpreter that you've patched. So you want to be running as little code as possible in an interpreter And so for that reason, I think it's good to like be in the mindset of I always want to be submitting my updates to the App Store for review, because I want that code to be running on the CPU as much as possible on people's devices. And so you can think of Shorebird as just a way to kind of like eliminate that gap between when you make a change and when users get that change. But the App Store, I think, is still a really important part of the process. And I would recommend pretty much just whenever you create a patch, fix that in the next release and submit the release to the App Store on the regular schedule that you normally would as well. And then you kind of get the best of both worlds, because you get the updates right away without the waiting of the App Store, but then people who are downloading it fresh from the App Store also have all of the same fixes, and they don't need to install patches. Because there is the cost, right, of like downloading a patch over the air and like it's running in an interpreter and all that stuff. So yeah, that would be my recommendation, is patch and then submit to the App Store in addition, and then you kind of have the best of both worlds.
Yes. Okay. All right. Then, yeah, thank you very much